Yep. Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy Murdoch, and this is Webinars with Wendy. I've been doing a series of webinars during the pandemic to keep myself entertained, visit with my friends, and learn something. We did have Andrea Wady on about a week or so ago, and we had a fabulous webinar. The problem was I didn't record it. So Andrea's come back for take 2. We're going to do this again. This time I'm checking the record button is on so I can post it, because people were like, where's the recording? And I was like, oh, there isn't.
Yeah, we didn't do it.
You know, you'd think after 130 something webinars, we would all have it down, but you know, sometimes just little glitches happen, and it's okay, because that gets us.
That's okay. We just do it again.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so thank you, Andrea, for coming back. I really appreciate you doing this again.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So Andrea, why don't you give us your background? I remember we talked about that, like how you got involved with horses, what you've been doing, so that we kind of know where you are today.
Sure. So my family have all been horses, always. My grandmother was a big hunt lady in England. That was never my cup of tea, but that's what she did. And so I was riding, I think I was 18 months old when I first rode. I was very little. And grandma's approach was, well, when you can stay on the pony, then you get a saddle. That was her version of how you learned to ride. So I grew up mostly competing, so junior show jumping. And then I met my husband and we moved to Costa Rica back in...
What prompted you to move to Costa Rica? Like, did you just decide one day?
We actually decided with a rum and coke on the beach in Costa Rica that we weren't going to go home. So we just didn't go home from our vacation. That's actually what happened. That is actually what happened. We sat on the beach and went, I wonder what would happen if we never went home. So we emailed our jobs and didn't go home.
Wow. What year was that?
That was 2002. And I came home for a couple of months to sort everything out. And then I went back. My husband's a big surfer. That's why we ended up in Costa Rica.
Oh, okay.
And obviously now we're back in Cornwall in England since COVID, but you know, that's a whole nother story. But we got there. Of course, I was missing horses, and everything that I saw, I found very depressing. There was a lot of tourist rides, and it's nothing that I wanted to be involved with. I've since learned there's a lot of excellent horse people in Costa Rica, but that wasn't what I was seeing. So I got invited. This horse business was for sale, and I was just really curious to go and just have a look. We'll just have a look. And by the end of the day, I'd bought 4 emaciated horses that were covered in ticks, 4 saddles, which I promptly put in the bin. And then just set about rescuing horses, retraining them, using mostly positive reinforcement.
But did you have a property or any? I mean, where did you put these 4 horses that you bought?
Found a field. You know, you think on your feet. You literally think on your feet. And back then it was like everything was just a giant adventure. You know, I knew these horses would be somewhat better off with me in that moment, in that I could get them food and veterinary care, and it wasn't the best field, but it was a field. And then I'm a great believer in manifesting your future. I'm a huge believer. Callie King, you know, our mutual friend, she's the same. And I literally sat down and manifested a giant farm, because I didn't have the money to buy a farm. And the owners of this farm rang me up and said, we've heard about you. Do you want to bring your horses to us? And use our 1,500 acre rainforest farm with waterfalls? And I was like, I do, actually. So I went there, and you know, I was just realizing a lot of the horses were just so traumatized. And that's when I had a chance meeting with David Lichman, who has been an amazing mentor to me. Even though we train very differently these days, he, you know, stands on the sideline and applauds that I went in a different direction, as every great teacher should. You know, like with my students, I'm like, I see them doing something that I'm not, I'm like, brilliant, I love that. You know, I think that's how it should be. And yeah, and it went from there, and I got to train with some of the world's leading Liberty trainers. Liberty was my passion. I always wanted to know what could happen when we took all the tools away, but then I began to realize that a lot of the Liberty we're seeing is a trained Liberty.
But you had such a hook to get these people to come there.
Absolutely. I don't think I'd get it now, Wendy.
No, because you know, I think we should just tell people in Costa Rica, it's a beautiful country, and I don't, how do we just, things are a little bit looser there.
It's blissful. It's just amazing and free, and it was my home for 17 years, and I do really miss it. But it's time to be here now.
Yeah, and it has its ups and downs. In other words, you know, like somebody could invite you to just keep your horses at their farm and that sort of thing, or you put them in a field. But on the other side of it, horse care can be across the map. It can be everything from.
Oof.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's like people say to me, I bet you've seen really big animal abuses all, you know, in Costa Rica. I'm like, I'm lucky enough to travel the world to teach, as are you. It can take many forms, and I see it in every country, if I'm honest, in every country. And some of it can be the ones that are cared for the best. And it's like, you know, and I think, and that's what I always sought out, was the people who just thought a little bit out of the box. But yeah, Costa Rica definitely had a hook.
So basically, I think I remember last time you telling us that you just started inviting people to Costa Rica.
Yeah, I invited Honza Blaha, who's amazing. He came. Emma Massingale, I don't know if you've heard of Emma Massingale from England. She's great. Elsa Sinclair is a very dear friend of mine. Of course, we made our movie together. So yeah, I mean, it's been incredible, absolutely incredible. But you know, and I've had amazing teachers, but really the horses are the ultimate teachers for all of us. And you know, I always say to all of my students, you know, learn from as many people as you can. Take the ingredients and make your own cake.
Yeah.
You know, do what works for your horse. So it's been a long road and an amazing road, but Liberty, I just think that there's so much you can do at Liberty. It doesn't stop you doing any of the other things that you want to do. You can still tack up and ride and jump or ride dressage, whatever you want to do. But when you really work on that relationship on the ground, and the Liberty that we're talking about today, I don't mean the kind of natural horsemanship Liberty where we train with ropes and then take the ropes away and the horse stays because you see the tail going and then the lips are tight. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. It's no judgment. I just wanted to go beyond that and say, can I still get my horse to want to be with me without the trained patterns, without treats to hold them, and I still use positive reinforcement if I'm teaching certain behaviors. You know, if I have a traumatized horse that needs help to find some motivation other than pressure and release, then you know I will use it. But ultimately, Pure Liberty really is about who do we need to have to be, who do we have to be for the horses to want to connect with us. And the horses blow my mind every time. I'm dealing with these damaged horses with students of very ranging abilities, and time again, almost without exception, the horses are like, there you are. Now I'm with you. And it's so humbling.
So I remember you telling us, so you started, you moved to this farm and you had 4 horses and you started having retreats, right? Or some.
I got up to 18 pretty quick, if I'm fair. I was doing the thing with my husband, like, no, it's another brown one. It's fine.
I have another friend. It's always a bay. Yeah, it's another bay. So, yeah. And you were working with your horses with Liberty Work, because I remember you telling me a story about one of your horses specifically.
Oh, that was Archie. So he was my game changer. I mean, that horse could have gone to the Olympics. He's phenomenally athletic. I mean, brave beyond belief, but then he was kind of like one of those Wile E. Coyote characters where he'd run off the cliff and his legs would spin and then he'd lose himself completely because he'd panic. So I did a lot of Liberty with him. And this one day I forgot my training stick, my extension of my arm. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. He's still with me. This is great. And so I did it every day for 3 days. And then I had nothing by the end of the 3 days because I had nothing to hold him to me, and he knew I didn't. So it made me realize that I was training the stay response with me. It wasn't voluntary. Even though he was at liberty and he could run off, he couldn't, because mentally I had trained him and enslaved him with the pressure and release, in that if you leave, I will apply pressure to your back end, and it's so entrenched in him, he would turn and face. So I'm actually really glad I broke it all, because I sat on the floor and I was like, oh, this isn't what I think it is. And that was really humbling to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, here I am I can't remember how old I was then, like 35 or something. And I'm like, I know nothing. I thought I did, and it looked really good. It looked really impressive. But actually, the truth of it was that I didn't have that horse with me by choice. So that's when I just changed everything, and just set out on this mission of who do I have to be for horses to want to be with me, with no coercion, with no make, with no extrinsic motivation. And it really has blown me away how I still, honestly, when people say, why do you think it works? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know, but it does. And it keeps working and it keeps working. So I'm just enjoying it.
This is really interesting, because so many people see liberty work and it is that pressure, and you're gradually taking things away. And so you've trained a response.
Yes.
But it seems to me, and there's another person that I know very well. His name is Julian Bignanis from Cavalia, and I watched him work with a horse that had been trained in that system, pressure release, and given the opportunity, that horse pissed off from its owner. And it was so fascinating to watch when he went to connect with the horse, and how it's hard to describe, because it's subtle. When you look at the difference, not like this screaming difference. It's not like you go, oh my goodness, this is like, you have to be aware of the subtle differences.
It's the micro signals.
Right. And I think that's what's so hard for people to recognize, is that we're not taught to be good observers, to see those subtle differences between, sort of the coercive type of liberty work and the by choice liberty work. And that was, the thing, like the horse, when he took off, he was like, fine, he wasn't disturbed or disturbed.
No. And this is my point. It's like, there is so many more ways up a mountain than one, and it works. It's fun. It works, and there is nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. I wanted to explore how much further I could take it. And that was just for me personally, but like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. But I think interesting what you touched on then, and this is not in reference to liberty per se, but you say we don't always observe, we don't always recognize, and I think that's because from such a young age, for centuries, we've had these images of what a beautiful horse looks like, with statues and paintings. We said this in the last webinar, and it's our eye is so trained to see a horse that's in a massive stress state as beautiful. It's we're a little bit skewed in our vision of what a relaxed horse looks like.
Yeah, I think you're right, because when you think about like Black Beauty, with the horse with the nostrils flared and the head up and the mane flowing, or a lot of these statues.
And it is beautiful, but it's a horse in flight. Or fight.
Fascinating, actually.
Yeah, it really is. You look at nearly all of the works of art, and the horse has some kind of pain, grimace, or
have you ever been through the Denver airport?
I have, actually.
The big blue horse that's outside the Denver airport, that's in the rearing position with the red eyes.
I've only ever been in transit.
Yeah, there's a whole story behind that one.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's
these red eyes. It's so creepy.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's but it's okay. I like to spend a lot of time observing horses. I'll go out into my paddocks with notes and just watch and learn about my horse and what he does when he's in his natural, or she in a natural environment, and learn from that and be like, okay, I noticed she doesn't like other horses really close to her. So Lucifer, someone's just put Lucifer. You know, so I'll see she doesn't like to be really close to other horses. She only likes to mutually groom, let's say, for 2 minutes. So that shows me, you know, when I'm at liberty, I don't need to be really close. When I scratch as a reward based, it doesn't have to be very long. So the more you observe your horse in their natural environment, your liberty will become easier, because you know what their natural preferences are.
So Archie told you that there needed to be something different. And so how did you go about exploring changing? I mean, I think last time I told you the story about Larry Weitzel, who was, he was a gaited horse paso trainer and doing a lot of competition. He walked into his barn one day and realized all of his horses were unhappy and instantly changed right then and there.
Yeah.
But it's very rare for someone at that level to be able and willing, because it's a huge, it's like jumping off a cliff. Everything that we thought we knew was true isn't true anymore. And there's a lot of people that is so terrifying that they can't take the leap.
I couldn't unsee it, Wendy. I couldn't unsee it. I would have been living a lie. If I'd have carried on, I would have felt so compromised. And of course, there wasn't an instant change. I partly, for about a week, was like, well, let's just pretend that didn't happen. And it's like, well, it did. And you know, he just kept looking at me and I felt it. He's like, you know, you be brave. Step out, be brave. And, you know, I've never shied away from that. But and I say to people, you know, when you take our courses and stuff, you can't unlearn it. Like once you've opened that door, you know, I get students every day going, oh my gosh, now I know this about my horse. I find it really hard to do A, B, or C. And it's like, well, you can still have a liberty mindset and ride. You can still ride with contact and have a liberty mindset. It's just like, for instance, I like to give my horses a say in what we do. I share the leadership with them. That doesn't mean I don't ever ask them to do anything. That's the crux of people go, oh, well, now I just can't ask my horse to do anything. Of course you can. You just do it from a different place. And you stop saying to yourself, oh, he only won't cross that water because he's being stupid, or he's just trying to get one over on me. He's just messing me around. They don't do that. They can't do that.
They don't have the brain to do that.
They can't do it. Yeah. That's us. We're the ones that can be very manipulative and play and wear masks and do all of that. They can't do that. So once we kind of really learn about that, you naturally shift anyway, because you suddenly realize, gosh, he's not just playing me around. He's scared. Even though he's putting on this big bravado, he's scared. And who do I need to be to help bring that fear down? And then when you do that, he starts to look at you and go, hey, you make really good decisions. I'm going to stick with you. And that's how it starts. You can start as easy as that. Just start listening, get your ego out the way. Don't worry about failing, and just be willing to stop. Like, I've been working with a lot of horses lately that have got a lot of fight in them, a lot of fight. They've had big abuses. We're working with them at liberty, and I might be asking them to, let's say, yield their forequarters away from me. So I put a hand on the cheek, a scoop up on the shoulder, and just step through and ask them to just try to step over. And some of them are just fighting and fighting and fighting. And I just go, I don't want to fight with you. Rather than stepping back into the old way of like, I'm going to hold my ground and you're not going to move my feet and la, 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 la. I'm going to be the one to move your feet. And I just breathe, relax every muscle in my body, open up compassion for them, because I know really underneath it all, they're just trying to protect themselves. And I just say, I'm not going to fight you. And literally by just surrendering that way, they're stopping and they're yawning and they're breathing. And then I'll step in and lightly ask them, and they will roll like a beach ball.
You know, you bring up such a good point about moving feet, because there's so many people are taught that you shouldn't let the horse move your feet, right? You should move the horse's feet. And that's not a concept I grew up with. It's not a concept that, I've heard it later in life, but to me, that is such a confrontational stance.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's a question of, if you take that position, then you always have to keep taking that position, because there's
always.
there's no alternative to that.
Well, yeah, and if you've got a horse that wants to fight and you're going to take that stance, you had better be ready to see that through. I don't want to do that.
Right.
And the way I talk about it is, I learned a lot of my passive leadership from Elsa Sinclair. I mean, she is the goddess of passive leadership. She's amazing. So passive leadership being you're in control of your body in space and time, and so's the horse. So now if we think about a herd, let's say, and I always use the analogy of the old black mare who's super confident. She's standing by the water trough, and in comes 3-year-old Billy Big Teeth with his snaking neck, and he's like coming running in, and she sees him coming, and she's just like, oh, whatever, and quietly and rhythmically just strolls over to the shade. Now, people could go, oh, well, Billy chased her off. No, he didn't. She chose to walk away because it was the smart thing to do. And Billy skids into the water tank and has no one to fight with. And then when she goes, oh, the bugs are really bad up here, I'm going to the top of the hill, and she quietly walks up on her own, one by one, the whole herd falls right in behind her and goes off up to the top of the hill because she makes smart choices. It wasn't about who moved whose feet.
Right. Right. And so, it's really, I think one of the things I'm hearing from you is that we really need to kind of take a step back and look at some of the belief systems that we have around how we
Absolutely
our horses. And that's not easy. It's not easy because we have
Nope.
so many myths and so many, that one thing about horses is they've been around for so long that we keep sort of bringing forward these myths like, that you have to train each eye because the brain can't transfer information, which is completely false. Horses have a bigger corpus, a huge corpus callosum, which is the highway between the two hemispheres, but we carry these myths forward, and it's so important for us to actually stop and look at the myth and look at the belief system. But that's not because sometimes we don't even realize what's in that. Well, and
I think a lot of people feel like they're not qualified. It's like, you know what, you are, no one knows your horse like you do. And I encourage all my students, believe in yourself. If it feels right, do it. Doesn't work out, okay, don't do it again. Right. I mean, obviously you need to stay safe. No
foul, right? That's the thing is, you can't let the horse get the better of you. That is a crazy statement. That's how I've had horses flip on top of me and roll over me.
Absolutely. And I really do believe, I've looked at this from many angles, and you can't control something that doesn't want to be controlled for a start. The only thing you can control is yourself. And I think a lot of our need to control these animals is rooted, maybe subconsciously, not always consciously, but it's rooted in fear somewhere. Yeah. If I lose control of this animal, I'm going to get really hurt. Well, I tell you what, if you keep fighting a horse, you're going to get hurt. Mm-hmm. So at some point, I remember one particular horse. I was doing a clinic in California. Bear in mind, it was a Liberty clinic. And in comes this trailer, and all I can hear is this horse kicking. I was going, oh boy. And offloads Fred the attack horse. That was his name.
Whoa, that was his name.
Yeah. And everyone's looking at me, and I'm going, I guess that's me going in there then. And the lady said to me, she's a lovely lady, she loved her horse, but he'd just attacked her 4-year-old granddaughter and bit her right across the face. Wow. And I was like, well, oh boy, I don't know if I want to do this. So anyway, I went into the pen with him, and my husband's like hovering on the outside, ready to hoik me over the edge. And I totally ignored that horse, 100%. I fixed the fence, I splashed the water, I picked the grass, and every time he walked towards me, I'm like, I don't have time for you, I'm busy. And I went on to the next thing, and I was rhythmically stalking around like we had the best Liberty session that I've had from any horse. He showed me no aggression whatsoever, and the only time in the whole weekend he showed aggression was when his owner shoved him through fear, and understandable, we talked about it, and I understand why she felt that way. Then it came up, and we realized, he's not an attack horse, he was a defending horse. Yeah, he was defending himself, because it was admitted later, that the cowboy way had been used on him. not the cowboy way, but old school way had been used on him. And it's like, you know, you can take these horses that are really serious red zone horses. I'm not suggesting you do what I did. It was not very smart, actually, but I kind of wanted to know. I like to explore. But I found all of them, you know, if we take that fight away from them and use distance as our friend, so you could be from the other side of the fence, or, you know, you don't have to be right in with them. They all, at some point, some take longer than others, but they just seem to go, they know our intentions. Wendy, you know that. It's like they can feel when, and every time I felt myself wanting to hold my space, and I just use my yoga breath and just go, I literally say it out loud, I don't want to fight you, and I respect that you need space, and I'll step back, and they take great big deep breaths, and invariably they will then come and close that gap and stand closer to me.
And I think what you bring up is such a great point, that we do not recognize or acknowledge the amount of space some horses need.
Oh, massive. We like to be a little bit too much in their bubble. You know, people say, well, I'm doing liberty and he's pinning my ears. Go 6 feet out. Right. Pinning his ears. Go 6 feet out. And then suddenly they're like, this is great. I want to be with you. But if you watch horses when they're grazing, they're rarely like this. You know, they're like this or like that, but they're still together. They're still together. So I was just reading Sam McLean's comment.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Great. I'm glad you did. So I'll read it. Yeah. I have a rescue fighter, and the natural horsemanship way does not work with him. I am trying other things inconsistently, but I get the feeling that the only way he knows how to relate to people is by using this behavior to get a reaction out of the human. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think horses learn by association. So they learn that if we use dominance around them, they use dominance around us. Also, when horses are kept in a more domesticated environment, obviously not feral horses, I think that the levels of aggression in domesticated horses, I forget what the figures are, but it's something like 60% more prevalent in domesticated horses than it is in feral horses. So they learn to use that with each other as well. And then they'll try and use that on us. And also, if that pressure has always been used on them, and you know, our body language can seem so shouty to them, and if they're showing us micro signals, you know, tight lips or a flicking tail or staring eyes not blinking, you know, different, if they're trying to signal to us what they want and we're not listening, or we don't know to recognize those signs, they are going to start talking louder. And that can come out in all forms: biting, kicking, barging, pushing into your space, because we've missed all the other micro signals. And after a while, they stop using them because they're like, well, they don't work. I just have to be loud.
Right. And I think that's very true. It's kind of like the classic example is the riding instructor that starts screaming at the student because instead of actually giving them the information they need, they just use volume. But volume doesn't change the fact that the person doesn't understand. It's just volume.
I had a fantastic one told to me once. A friend was in a riding lesson and the instructor was yelling at her, relax, relax. And someone went over to him and went, I don't think it's working. She's like, yeah, shouting louder. You can maybe get your point across, but it doesn't leave a very good lasting impression.
Right, and the horses resort to shouting louder simply because they don't know what else to do, right?
They literally don't know what else to do. And the thing is, people come out then with the, you know, he's being disrespectful, a million other things. It's like, no, it's natural horse behavior. He is using natural horse behavior. And if you watch in a herd, you know, a youngster might be getting a bit rambunctious and one of the mares will give him a look. And if he doesn't listen, it gets louder.
Yeah.
The difference is with horses is once it's done, it's done. You know, we tend to hold on to these emotions. And that's my biggest thing with horses. It's like, you know, if whatever we're doing, we have to take emotion out of it. It's not personal. Judge the behavior in front of you, not the horse. It's like, it's that we all take things way too personally. when it comes to horses, when really they're just doing whatever they can to survive in the human world.
Yep. And I think that that's where we see a lot of behaviors that people think of as disrespectful, but Robin Hood has a great way of describing it. She says all those fooling around horses, they're actually in domesticated flight. In other words, they can't flee, so that it has to go somewhere, and so they act out in what we call misbehavior. When really it's
energy's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, misdirected pattern, because they can't run away. You know?
And also, you know, something that I really learned when we made the movie, and that was how much horses need to move. Our horses don't move enough.
Yeah.
You know, we were doing 18 to 25 miles a day, and virtually every behavior issue just disappeared. Because, you know, the more we can move, I'm a great proponent for horse hiking. You know, we were working actually just today with a mare that has a massive startle response, massive. We just got hiking. We got moving with one of my advanced students, and it was great. And she said at the end, I feel like I've got my horse back, and it's because we're just moving.
Well, so they're designed to move, right? And if we look at
move
and see how much they move in a day, and then we put them in a little tiny paddock or a stall or a barn, and they're not able to move. It's like taking a little kid and then sticking them in a classroom and not giving them an avenue for that energy, and then calling them bad and putting them on medication.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, and people always go, I have to warm up in my lesson because my horse doesn't listen to me for the first half an hour. It's because he needs to move.
Right.
Like, move first and then have your lesson.
Right.
You know, it's just, movement can just be the biggest game changer. And, you know, a lot of our horses are standing in square monocrop fields with electric fence where they can't get to any of the hedges. Some don't have interaction with other horses. And it's like, you can't, it's very, very hard for them. It sends them inside of themselves, or they start using all the displacement or the stereotypies. And it's just basic movement, get them moving.
Yep. So, I think we've hit on two really big factors here, movement and space. And horses will give us space because space is of value to a horse. They're a big body. We tend to be a small body and don't recognize that they're, when you think about it, they're at least 8 foot long from their head to their tail. When you expand that out around them, that's a lot of space.
A lot of space.
Area. And so there's that's the other thing you so often see is when horses give us some space and people go, no, you have to look at me, or you have to be right here. And it's, yeah, exactly.
It must be awful for them. And I just saw what Laura wrote, and it's like, it's absolutely right. When horses can step out and give us space, I like to really ask my horses, please don't stand right on top of me. I mean, I've been run over by a couple of youngsters, in my past, and I don't want that to happen. So I just very, very gently ask. I do a lot of what I call air gap. So my intention is there, please, can you move out? And I literally, when I ask a horse to move, my hand is just laying on. It's just laying on, but I'm very clear with my body language. And, they just read us so easily. These horses that have been like leaning on us and pushing, and then I always say, be the lightness that you want to see in your horse. That's one of my favorite sayings that I use in all my clinics is, be the lightness that you want to see in your horse. And a lot of times with horses, we train them using a stronger pressure and then scale it back and the horse becomes light. But I'm like, well, let's start light.
Yes.
And so like a backup, for instance, if I want a liberty backup, I'll just place my hand on the chest, but be very clear with my body language. And even if the horse goes, what are you doing there? I'm like, that's all I wanted. You paid attention to my hand. That's great. And then it might progress to where the chest muscle just contracts. What are you doing? That's it. That's all. And then before you know it, you can do what I call the superwoman circle, where you walk towards the shoulder. If the horse is on my left, walk towards the shoulder, turn right in a circle, come in, scoop them up into the backup, and they back up on an air gap. Because if we reward the very, very slightest try from complete lightness, they go, is that all you wanted? It's like, that's it.
Yeah.
And yeah, with the ones that have been fighting, they love it, because they're just like, well, if that's all you want, I can do that.
Yeah. So you were in Costa Rica until this year.
Yeah, till the COVID disaster.
And then you were managed to get back to the UK. And you said that you've been working with a lot of horses with trauma more recently and finding really interesting things. So tell us about some of your work with these trauma horses.
Yeah, so I'm finding I've got the most amazing group of students that are so dedicated to helping some of these horses that have been, I seem to be working a lot with younger horses that maybe the kind of mainstream way of training has just not worked for them. They haven't fitted in that space, so they've got a bit fearful or they've got a bit fighty. So just trying to reintroduce to them, because horses learn by association. So with some of them, especially there's a certain rescue that I'm thinking of, you know, humans meant aggression to that horse. So we had to find a way to say, look, actually, it's not like that with everybody. And that's when we used an awful lot of distance, because you couldn't walk in and put your hand on that horse. She'd have taken your arm off. So I would be like 15 feet away going, well, can I stroke the air? Can I just do that? And she's like, yeah, you can do that. It's like, okay, well, what about 14 feet? And then before we knew it, because we were doing what I call retreat and approach, not approach and retreat.
Yeah, because I remember you mentioned that last time. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so retreat and approach. We always talk about approach and retreat. It's like, no, retreat first and then approach. That works better for me personally. Like I said, there's more than one way up a mountain. But what I'm finding with a lot of these trauma horses, you know, they have PTSD. Yeah. And so many get triggered, and we don't always know what those triggers are.
Right.
We don't always know, but if they know that we are going to retreat, if we see that they're struggling, I'm finding that they're willing to try and work with us. When we hang in there and hang in there and hang in there, they're just like, I can't cope, it's too much. So I'll just be like, step out a little bit, then step in, then step out a bit more, step in, and just ask for the slightest of tries. Like I said with the backup, can you even look at my hand? I'm not going to even try for a whole step of backup. Can you just look at my hand and pay attention to me? Can you give me an ear? And if you give me an ear, I'll back off. And they're really opening up, because they want to work with us. They have no reason to want to.
No, and that's the thing, is that so many,
blow me away.
Whether it's a horse or any animal that's been abused, it's amazing that they're even willing to try or to trust. But I think horses in particular are so, it's amazing how much that if we give that space, they will make an attempt. And
their capacity for forgiveness is unbelievable. But even however good we are with our timing, there are still sometimes triggers. And, you know, people will say, oh, I've had a massive backslide. The startle response came up. It's like, you know what? It's possible that that's always going to be there.
Yeah.
Like, you know, a lot of us have had traumas in our lives. And, you know, I've talked to people that have had massive traumas, and they say it never goes away. You just learn to use a different neuro pathway. And that's what I'm always trying to do with the horses, is go, okay, I'm not going to try and desensitize you and train that out of you, because I feel you just push it in further. Equally, I will go there. It's not that I won't go there. Like if a horse is really traumatized by plastic, I'm not saying I'm not going to go there. I'm just not going to do it in the traditional sense of like, I'm going to keep waving this at you till you relax, and then I will back off. I will retreat with the plastic until they look at it. What's that? That's all I wanted. Thank you. And build confidence that way. You know, I talk about, someone once said it to me about your comfort zone. Learning starts outside your comfort zone. Not for me. Not for me. I freeze. I become somewhat belligerent. It's like outside of my comfort zone. It's not a good place for me. But what I like to do is go right to the edge of my comfort zone and push it out.
No, it's so interesting, because like with Surefoot, I keep finding that the more, you know, when I use Surefoot, the horse is let down. And so many trainers think that you have to push the horse into a state of almost self-preservation and then let them down to get the dopamine. But what I keep finding consistently is that if I use servo pads and the horse comes down, they are more receptive to learning. They're more open.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, again, here's one of these things that it goes back to the pressure release. It's like they're already pushed. We just don't recognize it. And they're, you know, if we start to look at the subtle signs, we'll see, wait a second, this horse is not okay with me even being around him. So
Exactly.
why would I add more to this so that I can walk away and he gets a dopamine hit because I've made him more stressed?
Yeah, and then you are then associated with, he feels better when you leave.
Yeah. Oh, excellent point.
I mean, obviously I use distance, so I use retreat and approach, but I want the horse feeling better when I'm there. And I made a decision for myself. And like I said, everyone is different, and many different things work for different people. But I don't want my friend, being the horse, I don't want my friend to be trained to be with me because there's a fear of a consequence if they try to leave. I don't ever want that.
Yeah.
You know, I've had experiences in my life that made me realize that that's not a way that I ever want to train horses. I want them to see me coming and be like, oh, my day's going to get better. And that then comes to me. Who do I have to be for that to happen? Because the horses are perfect. Every single horse in our world is perfect because they never asked to be in it. So we can't judge them as having this or having that or having that. They wouldn't have had that issue or problem or stereotypy or behavioral issue had they have got to live the life that they were born to live, which is probably wandering around in a herd of 50 and traveling, well, you know, in family bands and traveling 40 miles. Now, obviously that's not reality anymore. So we do have a responsibility as horse owners to learn more about the species, learn what makes your horse really tick, why they behave the way that they do, how their hormones work, how their vision and their hearing works. You know, I feel like actually even, you know, some really brilliant riders basically don't understand the specific needs of that species of equus. And I find, you know, and I was one of them. I can say this because everything bad you could ever do to a horse in 48 years of being with them, I've done it. And if I could go back and beg forgiveness, I absolutely would. But it's brought me to where I am today. So I don't say this from a place of judgment because I've been there.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you and have suffered the consequences thereof as well. But yeah, you know, it's through those experiences that we come to a realization that there's something else. And, you know, my goal's always been to make sure someone doesn't have to go through my process of learning to be able to make those other choices. But, you know, and the other thing that I think it's really important to recognize how horses keep evolving to be with us. So it's not this one-way street, and we shouldn't feel guilty about having a horse in it.
Absolutely not. No.
Because, you know, when you think about it, first they were food, then they were beasts of burden, then they were transportation, then they were
military,
right? And now they are therapists. Now they are, you know, companions, therapists. They're even using them for their sense of smell is so great. Now they're using them for dogs. So I find it fascinating how it's almost like there's this sort of compact that we have that we need to keep evolving in terms of how we view horses, and horses keep evolving to view people.
Well, that's what blows me away about them, because they are so willing to do that. I mean, obviously it's a natural process as well, but like I was saying, with these aggressive horses and these traumatized horses, I haven't found one yet who doesn't want to try and figure it out, provided we leave our ego at the door, we get our timing and feel as good as we can in that moment, and we're willing to step back and go, oh, I need to rethink that and try it again, try something different. They just seem willing to try, and they're amazing.
So if someone wanted to go out and kind of just have a taste of what they might be able to do with their horse, what would you suggest they start with?
So I like to, first of all, find out what distance my horse likes me. I call it the anchor point. quite often working around the shoulder area is the easiest, either on the left or the right. So does my horse like me in close? Does he like me 6 feet away or 15 feet away? I like to find that out. When my horse is walking, match his feet. I'm sure you see it all the time as clinics. Horses are coming along rhythmic and we're racing along beside them. Get in rhythm. Start walking with them. And another good thing is stop looking at your horse. We spend the whole time staring at our horses going, oh, my horse is so beautiful. And they're going, I normally only get stared at right before I'm going to be attacked or eaten. So stop looking at your horse and do what we call look out for mountain lions. This is one of Elsa's favorites. So look out for mountain lions and literally watch while your horse is grazing, while he's lying down, while he's drinking. Start watching the outside environment all over the place. And they start to go, wow, you're paying attention. If you hear a vehicle come up the road, notice it before your horse and step out in front of them and, you know, prick your ears, get life in your body and look. As the danger goes by, blow out. The horses will start looking at you going, whoa, now they're paying attention. Because if you think about it, there's all these dramas going on around us 24/7 and the horses are seeing everything and we're still staring at our horse or our phone.
You know, this is so fascinating because just yesterday I had Shelley Whitehouse on who talks, she's does equine coaching. She uses the horses in coaching women in business. And
oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, it was super cool, but she said the thing to do was to be the lookout for your horse. She said exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you talk to Sharon Wilsey, she'll say, so there are these, it's so cool to see that these universal principles, they keep coming up over and over. And this one of watching the environment for your horse so that your horse knows you're looking out for him.
Yeah.
And I just,
absolutely.
I mean, literally, you've almost said exactly what she said.
And you can do it riding.
Yeah.
You know, be up and looking and like, oh yes, like the classic, your horse is spooking at something, so people turn their head away. No, look at it with them and go, yeah, got it. I think we're good, let's carry on. Another thing I love to do is join in grazing. It will blow your horse away. Now, some of them will be like, you're too close, back off. That's fine, I'll graze over here. But you start grazing and you see them going, I didn't know you liked grass. Oh my gosh. And quite often they will work their way in and they'll start grazing right round your feet. Literally graze right round. They love it. They love it. So that's ways just to start the process. And then, I mean, if you really get into it, we do have the course, the Pure Liberty course, but we kind of use our hand as a signal point. So follow my hand, all good things are over here. And that can be joining in experiences, looking out for them, all different things.
That's so cool. You know, again, it's so much fun to hear these principles that keep coming up and so different from
that's great though. I love it.
The typical sort of, if you will, more masculine approach, for lack of a better word, of, you know, not moving your feet and, you know, that they have to give you respect and that sort of thing. And I think that, you know, so many people are looking for a communication with their horse and a partnership with their horse because we're not dependent for our lives anymore. We're not dependent on them to carry us to town, to pull the cart, to go into battle.
No, exactly. And I think as well, I think especially this year, you know, there's been a big shift that people are seeing, you know, that this massive show of dominance. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with using dominance with your horse. If you put a halter on and lead your horse across the yard, that is a form of dominance. Dominance is not a bad word. It's, you know, you can call it insistence or whatever. There's things we have to do with horses. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's just really nice to spend some time in their world and see whether you can make your world and their world come together without any tools. It's a fabulous way to be. But I think a lot of people are realizing, you know, even on the human side, these gross displays of dominance are making people go, I don't think we need to do this anymore. I think we need to listen to each other more. I think we need to respect each other's cultures more. It's just what we're seeing in the horse world, and I love that it is evolving. And my hope is that the kids that we're training now, you know, they are going to look back to what we're doing now and go, oh, that's so old school. You know, God knows what they're going to be able to do with intention and telepathy, who knows. And I can't wait for that. But I do feel that there is a big shift in the horse world, and you know, it doesn't mean we can't jump and do dressage. It's just we can bring these principles over.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And there are always times when it comes to safety that we need to be able to say to the horse, at this moment, you need
Absolutely.
to, you know, do. But that's,
Yeah.
you know, the term resilience has come up over and over in that way, and that something can happen and the horse is resilient enough that he can handle that situation, and it doesn't, you know, he doesn't have to resort to.
And also, adversity can create a bond. You know, there were times when we were making that movie where things were really difficult, like difficult. And I thought, that's it. This relationship with my horse is going to be broken beyond belief. And yet it was stronger the next day than I could have ever imagined. So adversity is okay. And like you said, there's times when you have to say to your horse, listen, you need to listen to me now. And I'd counter that as well by saying there's times we need to do that for the horse.
Yes.
When he stops and goes, I can't move because I literally can't think. And if you push me forward, you know, people go, I don't know what happened. He just exploded. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. There were signs. We may have missed them, and God knows I've missed enough and hit the deck. But, you know, it works both ways, but it really does need to work both ways. Sometimes when people start down this road with liberty, they're like, oh, well, I can't ask my horse to do anything. Then you're missing the point. Like, this leadership goes both ways. Your horse has a right to be heard, but so do you.
Yeah. And, you know, it brings me up to my favorite thing is, where's the middle? I want it on my grave, but don't plant me in the middle, but where is the middle? Because what I see so often is that we want to swing from one extreme to another. You know, I've been over here doing all of these really intense, heavy duty things with my horse. Now I want to be totally free and everything. And,
and they can't handle it. The horses can't handle it.
Right.
The change is too big.
But at the same time, it's not functional. In other words, you know, if we're going to have a relationship with a horse, then it's in the middle, give and take, and it's never totally fixed, because nothing is ever dead center fixed. But we want to make sure that the swings are small between the middle instead of these huge, which are so hard on everyone. But I'm sure you've seen people that have swung, you know, like they get it started in something and they get almost kind of like zealot, like, you know, and they miss.
I think you have to work with what's in front of you. You know, if you have a horse that's been used to being completely controlled and then you go completely to liberty, it can actually really freak them out, because they don't know what's expected of them anymore. And they're like, oh, the end of the day, good horsemanship is good horsemanship. Whatever it is that you do, you know, do it to the best of your abilities, research, do what feels right. But ultimately, let your horse guide you. If you're doing what you think is right,
I think we talked about that.
It's brilliant to make mistakes.
Yes.
Some of my best discoveries have been because I completely screwed something up, totally screwed it up, and then went, well, that didn't work. And the other thing I would say as well is take a chance. Yeah. I'm not suggesting everyone jumps on a horse with no bridle, but some of my best ever bridleless rides have been on horses. I don't know if I can even say this, but horses that have never been trained to do it. And I've built the relationship on the ground. I've just gone, you know what? I just know this feels right. I'm going to trust my intuition, and it feels right. Now, like I said, I'm not suggesting everyone goes out in the paddock and jumps on their horses with no bridle. But, you know, whatever it is that you're doing, dressage or anything, if you feel in your gut that it's right to ask now, ask.
Right. And also, if it feels right in your gut, if someone else is telling you to do something that doesn't feel right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that the day of being in complete sort of reverence of instructors or people that are supposedly know more than us, those days are changing, because, you know, someone said the other day, knowledge is, I forget what it said now, but you can basically educate yourself in anything that you want to educate yourself in. And, you know, you are the only person that can advocate for you and your horse. And right. I think we've all been there when we've been in lessons and you're just like, this just does not feel right. And I know my horse doesn't like it, but you do it anyway. And I have a great example when I was training with Honza Blaha. and I had my phenomenal mare who was amazing, but my ego was in charge, and you know, she had shoulder in liberty and everything was great. And anyway, he basically had me do it again and again and again and again and again, and I broke it. And I finally went, I'm done. And he stood up and gave me a round of applause, and he said, I thought you were never going to get it. And that was my lesson, that just because someone's telling you to do something doesn't mean you have to do it. You can say, you know what, that's not right for me and my horse. And I love it when I see people getting emboldened to do that, because the relationship with you and your horse, you know, they know when you advocate for them, they do.
Yep. Well, this has been once again a really fascinating discussion. And let's see. Oh wait, can you talk about what might cause a horse? Okay, so this is from Laura. Can you talk about what might cause a horse to leave you after you're walking together at liberty? Anything we should consider when we feel the connection and the horse just stops dead?
Okay, so if they just stop dead, there could be many reasons. They could be looking at something in the outside environment. They could be, you know, someone said to me, oh, but my horse walks over there and then eats grass. It's like, well, that's okay. Go with them. Go and eat grass with them. Also, one thing, Laura, is sometimes as humans, we tend to walk too much in straight lines. Horses don't walk in straight lines. They tend to walk more in serpentines. So when you're walking at liberty, just start to kind of meander more. And I found that horses are much more likely to stay with you when you meander rather than walking in straight lines, because it can feel somewhat uncomfortable to them. And they just in nature don't generally walk in these straight lines like humans do. So be a little bit more aware of the outside environment and try and see a pattern. If you notice that your horse walks with you for 2 minutes and then tends to stop, ask them to stop after 1.5 minutes. Make it your idea.
Yeah. You know, it makes me think of my horse, Al.
You're welcome.
We would walk around the field after I'd ridden, and he would so often just stop somewhere along the field and just stop.
Yeah.
It's like the quarter ran out, and you just sit there and you take in the scenery. And
yeah, that's right. And it's not personal. It's
right.
often not personal. They're just going, I'd just like to stop now. Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's stop. But then it's a give and a take. And if you have your forward signal and follow my hand, let's go, you can stop for a while, you can go for a while. You know, it's just tuning into what they're looking at. And the other thing is the sense of smell. You see, people go, the horse just stopped dead and looked, but there was absolutely nothing there. It's like, you don't know what he can smell.
Or hear. Yep.
Or hear.
Yep. Their sense of smell is huge. That's what we're discovering now. And of course, their hearing is very acute.
Yeah.
And so there's things that they could be picking up that we wouldn't even notice. But again, that's where if we just kind of scan and look to see what they're looking at, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And when you've built up enough money in your bank, you can go, oh, look, there's something over there. Yeah, don't worry. I think that's fine. Let's do a 4/4 yield and head off. And you'll have enough money in the bank that you can do that, but you have to build it up.
Yeah. Well, Andrea, this has been another terrific webinar. I'm so glad to talk to you again. If people want to find out more about you and learn, where can they go?
So you can go to my website, andreawady.com. You can find me on Facebook. I had someone said about videos. I have a few videos there on Facebook. Also through the new horse class that Wendy and I are instructors. We're so excited because the new website's so fancy.
We both have courses with CRK, what was CRK training, and Callie has rebranded. It's now Horse Class. And so there's a lot of stuff available for you there. Is it horseclass.com? I don't know. I
think so. And actually you spelt my name wrong, but that's okay. I'll let you off.
Oh, I did.
Don't worry.
I couldn't read it on the screen here, okay?
It's been amazing.
But yeah, so check out Horse Class and you'll find both of us there. We both have online courses.
Yes, and they're open now, I believe. We're not doing it on this sort of rotations anymore. They're all open, and yes, it would be great to see you all there.
Yep, and they have great t-shirts, somebody's saying. All right, well, thanks.
Oh. I want a t-shirt.
I know. You didn't see the t-shirts? They've got a big horse on
it. Diana, we're on it. We're going to get some.
I'll wear mine next time if I can get one from Callie. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And just remember, you can see this and all the other webinars on the Surefoot Equine YouTube channel. If you subscribe, you'll get a notification every time we put up a new webinar. And do go back and watch Shelley Whitehouse's, because you'll hear these similarities. And I just think it's so fabulous that we're all kind of in this same sort of vortex.
Yeah, it's great.
It's really great.
Thanks, guys. If you have any questions, find me on Facebook. I can help you.
All right, thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.